Hello, thank you very much for joining us today. We're very excited. We have a special program today that's going to cover information that's really of vital importance to management and finance leaders in subscription organizations. Joining me today, I'm very excited to have Trevor Murphy, the CEO of FlexPay. Trevor has several decades of experience in operations, including COO roles at multiple companies, has deep experience in subscription businesses and payments, and has really experienced firsthand how companies often struggle with the accurate understanding, the valuations of retention programs, and really what it means for their profitability. So Trevor's going to bring some really amazing insights to us today in our conversation. He's a really smart guy, so we're really happy that he's joining us. So welcome, Trevor.
Thanks, Steve. That was very complimentary. I appreciate that. I'm really excited to get into this. This is profoundly valuable stuff, and I think there's some surprising insights we'll see here, and I'm hoping that the viewers can take advantage of it.
Absolutely. So as we get started, let's frame the problem. And what we run into, we see this over and over again, is that traditional accounting statements don't provide a clear way to identify or attribute the benefits of increased customer retention for businesses that have recurring business billing models. Another way of looking at this problem is not just how to assess the value of programs that help improve retention, but how do you value and create calculations and forecasts to prioritize initiatives, where to make decisions on investment to improve retention. And if you don't understand how to value it, then you're obviously going to make errors in where you're laying your bets on helping to improve the business operations. So Trevor and I are going to dive into this today. And what we're going to demonstrate is that we'll go through the gaps in the current reporting statements that really limit decision-making for finance leaders in where the sources of profit gains and revenue gains come from. We're also going to provide a deep dive into what the full financial impact of improving customer retention actually looks like, which I think will be really surprising because it has a massive amount of ability to create profit leverage, where relatively small increases in customer retention lead to very large gains in profitability. And lastly, we're going to introduce a new metric that we believe actually helps solve some of this problem by providing a way to give credit to retention initiatives and its connection to profit gains. So very rich agenda. So let's get started. Now, as background, I'm sure everybody that's here today understands that the core to the subscription billing model is so attractive for businesses because it provides a recurring billing from your customers, right? Instead of having to go and ask your customers to come back to every month or provide sales and other types of incentives to come and purchase from you, they've signed up for a relationship where they're getting ongoing access to goods and services. And that means that it provides a constant stream of revenue. But key to that assumption is that retention is the driver of profits for the business. The longer the customer is active in their subscription, whether it's a B2C business selling consumer goods or a business providing software services to other businesses, the longer the retention of the customer translates directly into profitability for the business. And the reason for this is pretty straightforward, right? We have a cycle of over customers that's pretty standard, right? Companies or individuals will look and do some research to find the product or service they want to enroll in and sign up. And the company is going to be investing significant resources to acquire those customers. And the retention process starts as soon as the customer signs up, and the company's earning revenue until that customer churns out. But what's really important to understand is that through that entire journey, until we get to maybe 3, 4, 5 billing cycles into the customer relationship, because of the customer acquisition costs, the subscription business isn't earning any profits from that customer. So that window at a certain point after retention reaches a value is when profits are created. And that's really what we want to focus on today. And why is this? Again, it really is based on the customer cost of acquisition for subscription business. And Trevor, we see that most businesses are spending 3, 4, 5 billing cycles, the revenue they earn from customers, just to overcome the cost of acquisition, right?
Yeah, and it forces you to have a long LTV on your customers, and if you can't maintain that, then you put yourself in a situation where you may not even want to acquire the customer in the first place. So whatever you can do to extend out that LTV by increasing retention, it makes the cost of acquisition to the total revenue ratio much higher, which you want to see at 2.5, 3.5 at least. And if you can't get that, then you're not going to do the acquisition in the first place. So it's essential that you do this.
Yeah, and this is where the relationship between that cost of acquisition and retention comes in, because when customers churn, whatever initiatives are put in place to stop a customer from ending their subscription, once that customer stays, their cost is a recovery cost. I mean, whether it's internal or you're paying a third-party solution provider to help save that customer from churn. Once that customer is already acquired, the only cost you really incur on a marginal basis to deliver the ongoing service or product delivery to that customer is your cost of goods sold. That's it. So that's really what we talk about, is that when customers continue to bill, all else being equal, of course, you can make investment decisions on other initiatives, but for every dollar of revenue from a retained customer, your fixed costs don't change and your customer acquisition costs don't change. So the leverage effect on profit means that the revenue created from retained customers drops very, very heavily to the bottom line, a much higher percentage than your average customer.
Yeah, I like to say that. Sorry, I like to say that at scale, the SG&A goes to zero. And then that's where you really have scaled and optimized your business, where the gross margin that you're generating off new acquisitions and retention and those retained customers and the repeat billing is so large that it's irrelevant what you're spending on guys like the COO. So anything you can do to pump up that part of the business is going to get you the best results and the highest enterprise value.
Great point. And so really what that leads us to is the conclusion that subscription business really need to do two things. One is both optimize recovery from churn. So whenever there's opportunity to engage with the customer, regardless of the reason of the source of the churn, do everything possible to try to reduce that churn number, increase retention, and do everything possible to increase the retention of those customers following recovery. Because once that customer is saved from churn, every billing cycle that they deliver subsequently is going to deliver that very, very high level of profitability for you. And so retention, ongoing retention, is a continuing priority. So let's go through a sample company. This is more of an amalgam of companies that we work with. Puppy Bits, they are a monthly dog subscription company. And they recognize that they are losing about 50% of their customers of the total churn due to failed payments. So the example we're to go through is aligned around our business model. FlexPay is a failed payment recovery solution. We help companies that are losing customers when there are credit card payment declines by the banks on their customers where they're not recovered. That completely results in churn, and so we help reduce that problem. So let's jump to an example about Puppy Bits, dive into their business a little bit and see how their spreadsheet, their income statement, plays out with their run rate, and then what it looks like once we have a retention program in place. Okay, so here's some metrics about Puppy Bits. And Trevor, you want to take us through what this looks like? It's probably a pretty standard business in terms of the ratios of costs and growth.
Yeah, it looks pretty normal. 42,000 customers on subscription billing, AOV of $60. Starting monthly revenue of $2.5 million. It's pretty normal stuff. Cost of acquisition of 180. That's 3x on your AOV. I think our viewers are pretty familiar with that cost. If I jump down to the bottom, you see that the lifespan of the LTV of a customer is 4, so it means you're generating $240 of value, so you are making a profit on this. So you have $240 of revenue over a cost of acquisition of 180, so it's not too bad. You're acquiring 18% of your revenue in new customers each month, and you're churning out 16%, which means you're only really adding a little bit each month, which is, I'd be a bit worried if I was running this business. Monthly failed payment rate of 8%, that's half of your churn. That's a pretty substantial amount, and that's pretty common. We see a lot of our customers with rates of failed payment in around that area.
So it's pretty surprising what companies that work with card payments, how much the churn is actually caused by failed payments, isn't it?
It's shocking, actually, to see that. We talk to our customers, and very frequently they haven't analyzed it from that perspective. And when they have a look at the failed payment rate versus what they understand their churn to be, and they see that it's 40 or 50%, oh my God, that's a catastrophic problem. But if we're able to fix it, well, you're going to see in a moment what happens when you start to address the problem.
Right. So let's look at the spreadsheet. The income statement for Puppy Bits. This is the run rate, right, with their existing churn and acquisition numbers. And it looks like the good news is they're growing as their acquisition outpaces churn, but their bottom line profit contribution is pretty tepid, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not going very far, right? They've taken their profitability from -3% of total revenue to, sorry, you'll notice that I'm looking off to the left. I had to move this to a bigger screen because my eyes are going bad in my old age. But from January, they were -3% of total revenue in profit. And then by December, they managed to get to -1. I'm not sure I would be screaming to the board about those kind of results, but there is something you can do to improve it.
There is, and this is where the fun part of our conversation really goes, because we can start diving into what seems like fairly minor improvements in customer retention and really dive into how that plays out over a 12-month period. So let's make the assumption, this is very common for the types of performance we're able to deliver, is that we're the 8% failed payment rate, we're going to be able to recover 25% of those payments. So let's look at the numbers before we dive into the income statement and see that now their churn rate has gone down from 16% down to 14%. So it's a 2% reduction in churn in absolute terms, a 12% reduction in the churn rate. Again, it seems like a very small gain, but let's play out how this appears. And one comment I want to make before we dive into the income statement is that with Puppy Bits, it's something we see very often, that once the customer is recovered from a failed payment, they continue to bill for some number of billing periods afterwards. So we're going to use the assumption that the customers that are saved from failed payments will continue to bill for 4 periods after recovery.
Yeah, that's a substantial change. So where before we were going to -1% of total revenue, now at +6% of total revenue now at net income at $405,000 per month, and growing, by the way. That just, we cut it off at 12 months. It doesn't mean that we're going to peak out at that point. It's going to continue to grow because this business is wisely using the new revenue to reacquire additional customers. So they're in a perpetual growth positive cycle, which is powerful. And I think the question that you might ask is, well, for such a small effect, like how are you able to change the metrics of the business so profoundly? And the simple fact, the most important fact, is that a reacquired customer generates revenue for which all you have to pay is the cost of goods sold, and the rest of it goes to your bottom line. And when it goes to the bottom line, now you have that cash available for a variety of purposes. The most obvious one is reacquisition or further acquisition. But of course, you can imagine any number of other initiatives you might take that can grow the business very quickly and make it even more profitable.
Yeah, it's fun to look at this, Trevor, because what I can see is that the revenue from recovered customers, what we did with this pro forma income statement is separate out churn and the sources of new revenue, just to make it more clear about where these numbers are coming from. And so when we look at the revenue from recovered customers, we continue to see it to grow as the impact of months of recovered customers continue to bill for a 4-month period. And I just want to, and Trevor, just get your feedback on this. We see Sure. with other businesses that lifespan actually can be quite longer. I know we have a SaaS company where we see that 80% of the customers recover continue to bill after 10 months. So the 4-month assumption is not unreasonable by any means. In many cases, it's actually quite a bit longer, isn't it? That has more of a compounding growth effect.
It's interesting, actually. We've recently proved this with several of our clients. Our clients are clients and prospects, by the way, are very open with their data and helping us to understand their business. They understand that when we look at it, we can provide some insights. But In having access to that data, we've been able to assess that typically the number of bills you get post-recovery can exceed substantially the total LTV or number of rebills on the initial acquisition cohort. So for example, let's say January 2024, you acquire 100,000 customers and you have an LTV of 3, you're going to get an average of 3 bills for each of them. I mean, it's pretty common stuff. What we're identifying is that for a customer that you recover, say, from that cohort, in fact, even if you say you recover them at rebill 3 or rebill 4 or rebill 5 or somewhere else in the future, even after that, they have a further 4 on average, or 4.5 or 5.5 actually, very frequently, rebills. And why is that? Well, because we'd like to break out customers into 3 groups. You have the group of people who like and love your product and want to keep it for a long time and who never run into a problem with their billing. So these are your very, very best customers. You have a group of customers who, for whatever reason, they try it, they don't like your product or service or whatever it is, or something happened that they didn't want to be on board, and they very quickly, they cancel out. And that's why you see that initial drop off. I'm sure all of you have seen this big drop off in the first couple of months where you lose a bunch of customers. And so those are the customers that were never really bought into your product. And then there's the group in the middle, which are the ones who like your product. They've never indicated, and this is the key point, they've never indicated to you that they want to cancel the subscription, but something happens. It's like a car accident for subscription billing. And something happens, an accident happens, and the payment has failed. And the customer didn't want that. You didn't want it, the customer didn't want it. Something in the banking system caused it to fail. They otherwise would have continued on had something not happened. They would have been, that first highest value cohort had there not been a payment problem. So if you can fix the payment problem, that's pretty exciting, because you now have a customer who's never indicated that they have a problem with your product. They just want to keep on using it. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing these very long LTVs post-recovery on customers that you can recover. And of course, the customers you recover, you've paid very little to acquire them. So they just turn into all this future revenue for your business, which goes directly to your bottom line, which in the case of this spreadsheet, in this model, turns into net income on the bottom.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We look at this, that before, without the 2% reduction in churn, their revenue was growing just 24% in a 12-month period. Now we're seeing that the total growth in the revenue is over 2.5 times. COGS is growing slightly as more customers are active, and then we're delivering the cost of sales. Margin, of course, gross margin is exactly the same because that's fixed, but we see that the impact of higher revenue on a fairly fixed operating expense translates into a break-even or slight net loss and with a 6% net profit delivery now. Tremendous transformation in the financial performance of the business. That really is a way to be able to see what the true impact is of reducing the failed payments. So pretty exciting to see.
Fantastic, yeah.
And one of the concepts we introduced early was the problem with the financial statement, the particular statement in particular, is that because there's no ability, we can look at that and see the impact on profits, but we don't see is what caused them. And so we're introducing a new metric that we're calling net income per customer, or NIPIC. So the calculation of NIPIC is pretty straightforward. We take the net profit dollars and divide it by the number of active customers. And the value of this metric is that it provides a measure of how much of each of your active subscribers are contributing to your bottom line profits. And what you can see with that, as retention initiatives start to increase the rate or the number of active customers, the stronger percentage gain in NIPIC plays out because of the leverage that's being created, where the revenue being generated outpasses the cost to be able to service that customer base. Other benefits that this metric provides, is that it allows you a way to compare your company to other companies in similar spaces, and you can start to back into what is the retention rate of your customers versus theirs if you understand what their NIPIC is. Because if they're earning a higher NIPIC, then most likely either they're charging a demonstrably higher price, which is unlikely that since you're a competitive space, or they're simply able to retain those customers longer and earning more dollars than it takes to acquire and service those customers. So the NIPIC metric is something that becomes very useful. It also becomes a way to be able to start benchmarking initiatives and how to forecast out what the impact on profit is for increasing retention, working out scenarios, and a useful tool. So we're not really going to have time here to be able to dive into that in detail, but if we summarize for puppy bits what the impact is on of the retention program, again, we're looking at just a 2% reduction in churn as a result of that failed payment recovery. And their NIPIC is going from negative 50 cents per customer to a positive number of 3.7. And that's really where you can see a direct connection between retention gains and profit gains.
As someone who runs the management team, as you're well aware, I love this metric too, because it gives it gives you a metric that you can use when you're doing your OKRs and you're planning at the start of the year, and something that's very much related to this particular performance attribute of your business. And I don't know that there's too many others that target this so succinctly, and I really appreciate the development of it internally. I think it's a really important metric for planning and for understanding how your business is transforming, but also comparing with your competitors.
Yeah, I think that's probably the unsung benefit of this. It gives you goals of what you want to deliver as your NIPIC value, and you can start to track the performance of your initiatives that are delivering or helping to achieve those goals. So, in conclusion, the benefits of increasing retention are clearly that profit leverage is created, right? We see an increase in revenue that is delivered by a higher number of retained customers, and that revenue outpaces expense growth, all else being equal, of course. And really understand the relationship between customer retention and profit delivery. It has to be the way to assess the economic value of your retention initiatives. And that's, I think, one of the most important takeaways we ask everybody to have today is that when you look at various initiatives to reduce churn or increase retention, whatever way you're looking at the initiative, that you really need to make sure that you are conducting your forecast on the benefits in a way that you are measuring not just the benefits in month one, but the expected retention of those customers over the future billing cycles, and the recognition that the revenue that is going to be created as a result of that is going to be at a higher net profit margin than average dollars coming into the business. And again, we recommend that net profit for customer is a good place to start, really to start to understand and track the relationships between your retention gains. One other recommendation I really want to make, and I know, Trevor, this is near and dear to your heart, that when we talk to customers, because you talk to customers all the time, when you talk to our customers, one of the ways they still have blind spots in their business is understanding what is that life cycle of a customer following retention. And we're now making recommendations to all of our customers that when a customer is retained through an initiative, whether it's recovery of a failed payment or another initiative, that now be stored within the billing system so that it can be tracked, and we can easily track how many billing cycles those customers continue to deliver, right?
Yeah, it's well, obviously very important for our business because it's really one of the most important values that we deliver. We deliver many values, but it's obviously one of the probably the most important. And like we kind of keyed up on early on, is that when you're looking at churn, you're looking at churn overall. You may not be looking at the failed payments. And if you're not looking at failed payments, you're probably not looking at retention after recovery of failed payments. So it's natural that you don't have a metric to track this. So I highly recommend that you have a look into your business. You take a look and see what your failed payment rate is. Get over the shock, have a drink, and then and then start to track the data and find out because if you are using some sort of strategy to recover, I presume you're using some kind of strategy to recover after a failed payment. Take a look at what your LTV is afterwards. I'm guessing if you were to compare that to your overall cohort, it's actually a positive difference, and then really tackle the problem aggressively, because it's 40 or 50% of your churn problem. For those of you looking after churn, there are solutions for this. You should have a look at it and figure out what you can do to reduce the failed payments that you have, because it's going to generate a bunch of bottom line revenue, which you can do for any number of things. Which you can then use for
That's the rub, right? If there's not a proper assessment of the value of the initiatives, then there's not going to be the proper prioritization of pursuing every path to improve those numbers.
Exactly.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of our structured presentation. We do have a question. We will stay on the webinar for a number of minutes. So if you have any questions, please feel free to use the box. We'll try to get some of them live. So Trevor, we have a question from James for you. And I think what he's asking is that when companies start to generate more cash flow and more profits from increased retention, it creates new opportunities for what to do with those cash flow and profits, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious, have you seen companies start to reapply those, and how does that play out for helping drive even more success within companies?
I think there's really good value in, if you go back, if you think back to the P&L that we showed you, you'll see that we separated out the recovered customer, their newly acquired customers, those things. It's good to have that because you can actually see the net effect of what these efforts will do in terms of new bottom line revenue for your business. What's really cool about that new bottom line revenue for your business is that if you hadn't planned at the start of the year, or if you didn't have a solution for recovering failed payments, then nobody budgeted for what to do with that additional revenue. And so if you're the executive who, say, brings in a FlexPay or this kind of service and you implement it, and now you've got a bunch of bottom line revenue that's coming to your business that you hadn't anticipated, well, you can do all sorts of things with it. I think the natural thing to do with it, James, is to acquire more customers. You'll acquire a bunch more customers. The return on investment on new acquisitions probably 3x, 4x, 5x if you're really good at what you're doing in your business. And so whatever you're spending on your recovery effort, let's say you're getting 8x on that, well, you get to multiply that by the new cash you develop, so it's another 4x. In fact, the initial effort you put into recovering the failed customer recovers the customer, turns into bottom line revenue, and then becomes new customers. The multiplication on that is 20, 30, 40 times your initial investment. So it's highly valuable. That said, there's a bunch of things you can do in your business. You can improve your product, which will increase your retention, decrease your churn, which will lead to more bottom line revenue for your business. You can open up a new product line. You can, very interestingly, I think this one's kind of a cute insight that may not jump out at you, is when you extend your LTV, what that means is your ratio of your CAC to LTV ratio goes down, which means that the value of your ratio is better, which means that you could essentially afford to pay more to acquire customers, which means then you can go to markets that perhaps your competitors can't go to. So you extend out your LTV by reducing your retention on your failed payments. It means that your ratio from CAC to your client lifetime value goes up. And now you can use that to increase your CAC to acquire even more customers and grow your top line revenue, which then leads to, I know I'm riffing here, but it leads to something else, which is really cool, which means you've added to your top line revenue. You've probably added to your EBITDA on the bottom, which means that if you were looking, maybe you wanted to fund your business and you were looking at the capital markets and you're like, oh man, I don't know. I don't have the revenue for that category of investor I wanted, but by doing this, maybe you can push yourself into that category of investor. Or maybe you can push yourself into the rule of 40 or rule of 50, which means that you're more attractive to an investor. Or maybe you push yourself into a situation, sorry, I know I'm going on and on, where you don't actually need that new capital because you're getting it through organic growth through retaining your customers. As you can see, the effect is profound. It's not a small effect. It's not marginal. So this profound addition of new revenue can maybe offset the requirements of new capital into your business.
Yeah, wow, that's powerful. I think it really opens everybody's eyes. And when we look at the numbers, it's so powerful to think that relatively small gains in retention translate to so many options and possibilities. The contribution of more revenue, of more profitability, the ability to reinvest that in initiatives, whether it's growth or more efficiency plays or improving the product experience to help make your product more competitive against other players in the space. It gives you options that don't exist in your current run rate of the business, and that can only lead to very positive outcomes for everybody. So this brings us to the end. So Trevor, thank you so much for joining. Really helpful to hear all your insights and knowledge and real world examples. And we'll continue to stay on for a few more minutes if you have any more questions. But I really want to thank everybody. Hopefully you found this content valuable. If you have any questions about what we shared or want advice on how to create new metrics in your business to track the impact of retention or forecast initiatives, or you have questions about failed payment recovery, please raise your hand in the Q&A and we'll follow up with you and schedule some time. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Steve. I had a great time.